One, two, three, funk it.
I think that the 4-year-old I nanny for just told me about his past life. Here's why. We're having a normal conversation and he says to me, yeah, that was the life before my surgery. And I know enough about the kid to know that he has never had surgery before, so I said, hey, what do you mean before your surgery? He says, yeah, don't you remember like a long time ago when I was older and I got shot? And he's like, and then I went to surgery and when I came back I was a baby again and I had a different mom. I said, what? He said, yeah, my old mom. Then explained to me what she looked like, explained to me the siblings he used to have before the siblings he has now, and the ones he explained were very different than the ones he has right now. Here's the best part. He told me that he was a bad guy and that there was a lot of people after him before he got shot, and he got shot trying to hide in a library. He's 4 years old. He can't just make this up. Their brains don't work like that.
Tell me about a time your child's told you a past life story.
Okay, yes, I have a good one. So, my brother, who is currently 3 years old, and yes, he's 3. Oh my God, how old am I? I'm 29. There's a huge 25-year age gap. Latinos are popping kids at all times. But that's not important right now. So, a couple of months ago, my brother, out of nowhere, out of the blue, he's like, Mana, because that's what he calls me, Mana. He's like, Mana, do you remember when I used to be the big one and you were the baby and I was teaching you how to eat and how to walk and I was teaching you things? And I'm just there like, no, I don't remember that. What the hell are you talking about? He's like, yeah, you used to be the baby and I used to be the adult. And I'm just there like, what the?
Today we're going to be talking about James Leininger, who was born to Andrea and Bruce Leininger on April 10th, 1998. So when James was around 2 years old, he started having very vivid nightmares. Andrea recalls that she would come into his room and hear him screaming things like airplane crash, plane on fire. When James was able to speak, his parents started asking him about these dreams. James started recounting experiences that sounded like they were out of World War II. He claimed that he flew a plane called the Corsair, that it took off from a boat called the Natoma, and that he had a flying partner named Jack Larson. James also played with GI dolls, which he named Walter, Leon, and Billy. When his parents asked him about these names, he claimed that they were the men that met him when he got to heaven. Obviously, his parents were very confused, so in September of 2002, his father, Bruce, went to a World War II reunion event for the Natoma. While there, he learned that there was a pilot that died at Natoma Bay. His name? James Huston Jr., like for part 2. Not only was James Huston Jr. a real person, but the GI dolls and Jack Larson were as well. Billy, Leon, and Walter were all aviators that died before James Huston and had the same hair color as the GI dolls. Jack Larson was still alive. Here he and James Leininger are together. Bruce also met 3 other men that day that confirmed a lot of the things that James had said. One of the craziest parts of this story is that James was actually able to reunite with his past life sister, Annie Barron. James had never met Annie, and yet he was able to confirm that they had another sister named Ruth. He knew the age differences between all of the siblings. He knew that their father was an alcoholic. And he even remembered a random memory about them getting portraits drawn together when they were younger. All of which Annie confirmed. James is now 22 years old, and he and James Huston look pretty similar. See for yourself. Let me know if you guys want me to do more stories like this.
Tell me about a time your child's told you a past life story.
For context, I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and that's where I raised my son. This one time he was about 4 or 5, and I was going on about how incredibly lucky or blessed that I felt because he was my son. To which he replied, yeah, I'm so lucky I got to choose you. And I said, choose me? And he said, yeah. This one time I was with my other mother and we were walking through the forest. We found a cabin and you were inside, and I looked through the windows and I said, yeah, I want her to be my next mom. And that's how I got here. And I said, your other mother? And he said, yeah, my other mother. And I said, bub, I'm your only mom. And he said, this time around. I asked him to describe what the other mother looked like, and he said, she had long white hair that touched the ground, it would drag on the ground, and that she had pale skin, white as snow skin.
Tell me about a time your child's told you a past life story.
Okay, so this actually wasn't my kid. It was my sister when she was a baby. Okay, just so you know, me and my sister are 13 months apart. And when we were babies, my grandmother used to smoke, but she didn't want anybody to know. So she used to hide out in the laundry room and do it. And one time when my sister was about 2 or 3 years old, she went in the laundry room and caught my grandmother smoking a cigarette. And my grandmother tried to put it out real quick and hide it, but my sister said, "Oh, Grandma, that's okay. When I was a lady, I used to smoke cigarettes all the time, and I used to burn myself a lot." Then she proceeded to point to a small birthmark on her body and say, "Look, this is where I burned myself real bad one time." Crazy, right?
Scary past life memories. A Reddit user talked about how they would have the same dream that they were living in the past. They said they would constantly have a dream about being in the 1940s and being shipped off to war. It was the same dream every time. He was a young man in England and he knew that the war was coming. He thought that getting involved in the war was the right thing to do, so he enlisted. This turned into him getting accepted into the army, and then the last part of the dream was always the feeling that he was stepping onto a boat and heading off to war. He has no idea where this dream comes from or if it's connected to a past life, but he constantly has it. A 2-year-old boy in England started telling his mom that he used to be a woman. He went into detail about how he was alive before and he was married to a man named George, and the two of them didn't like each other very much. And then one day the former lady had a baby with the man named George, but he didn't want the baby around, so he was mean to both of them, so she took the baby and ran away. This is a pretty bizarre story for a kid to break down, and he swore that he lived and grew old as a woman before and was married to a man named George. That's everything we have for you today. Make sure that you guys like and subscribe.
I'm a hypnotherapist, and this is one of my favorite stories from doing a session. This girl came to me, and even though she had a lot of issues going on in life, she was always just super happy and took things like really positively. But she had like a weird fear about holding babies and just felt like she just needed more answers in life in general. So we do the session, we put her under, and as we start the session, we find out that she was this cute little lady in the middle of a forest during medieval times because she didn't want to be a part of anybody's kingdom. Well, one of the king's men found her in the forest and convinced her to come live in their territory. And they were promised everything that they want as long as they served the king. Well, her service was to be his surrogate, so have his baby. And she did not like that, mostly because she wasn't able to keep her baby when it was done. So she has the baby. She escaped with the baby and took off back into the forest. Watch part 2 for more. Part 2. So in this life, she escapes back to her house in the forest with her new daughter from the king. And for a while, they live a totally good life. She raises her daughter for about 3 or 4 years. But then the king's men end up finding her again in the forest, and this is where it gets kind of ugly. They not only took the child back, but they also cut off all of her hair on the spot and then took her as their own prisoner to take her back to the kingdom. She spent her life as a prisoner for about 2 years until her brother ended up breaking her out. And here is the fun part. The baby in that life is her sister in this life, and her brother was the same brother that she has in this life as well. And when she told her mom said it all made sense because when she was a little girl, she used to take her sister out of her mom's hands and say, "Thank you for having my baby." She also would refuse to cut her hair, ever, and would scream if anyone ever tried. And her sister have incarnated many lives together that way, because it teaches their soul love.
So a few weeks ago, my older sister had a set of twins, and my daughter just met them before bed via FaceTime for the first time. It was going really cute until she just randomly blurts out to us, "One of the babies is going back to heaven." I have no idea why she would ever say that because we don't even talk about religion or heaven in our house, so it's really, really strange that she says this. Really creepy that she says this. It's not the first creepy thing she's said to me either. Another time she told me randomly, like nothing, no context to what we were talking about, "I'm not big anymore." When I asked her more about it, she meant that she was now a child again, which was, again, really strange, but kids can have imaginations that run wild. Then there was the time, though, that my stepfather passed away, and she was about 3 years old. She started randomly laughing hysterically at nothing, looking out a window, and I asked her what was so funny. She tells me, "Friend David." My stepfather's name was David, and we don't know any other Davids that she would know. I don't know if you guys remember a few months ago, I made a post about my daughter talking about some creepy stuff about one of her newborn twin cousins going back to heaven. Well, today she just made a comment, and it definitely has solidified my belief that she has been to heaven, and she knows way more than us about it. She told me as we were pulling out of the subdivision that I had forgot to buckle her harness. We were in a hurry and I made a huge mom mistake, so of course I pulled over right away to do that, and I was profusely apologizing to her, telling her I was so sorry that I wanted to keep her safe and I never meant to forget to buckle her in. And she told me, I like going where the babies come from. When I'm there, I'm a little angel. We don't talk about religion in our house, so I have no idea where she would be getting these things from. We don't have cable TV, and we never unsupervise their TV time anyways, so it really is something that she keeps bringing these things up to us, and it was really, really something else to hear.
My 3-year-old daughter is always telling me stories about her angel parents and the life she didn't have with me. The other day she told me her angel daddy's name was Kevin, and that they were driving together when cops pulled him over, took him away, and then he died in jail. She also told me she chose me in the woods.
Tell me about a time your child's told you a past life story.
When I was 4 years old, my daughter came to me and started talking about her past life. She told me she was a potato harvester. And she told me she had a sister that she really, really loved. Then she told me she died in that life, but she told her sister when she died to meet her in her next life. So I was like, okay. She told me she met God, that God was a woman. She was 4 years old. And I was like, okay. She told me that God is always dressed in orange and in red. And okay, I was like, fine. A couple of months passed and my grandfather died. I was very upset. And my daughter told me, Mom, don't be sad. Your grandfather went to the stars, picked up my sister from my past life, and he brought her back. And now she's in your tummy. And that's how I found that I was pregnant with my second daughter.